Once upon a time, a long, long time ago, there lived a rich and powerful king. His name was Dionysius II, and he ruled Syracuse with a terrible authority and absolute power. He was also totally stressed out. He lived in constant fear that he would be assassinated, like so many of the kings before him. One day, a young man was showering him with absurd compliments and happened to remark how blissful the king's life must be. The king said to the flatterer, quote, "Since this life delights you so, do you wish to taste it yourself and make a trial of my good fortune?" The young man could not believe his luck, and he was promptly seated on a golden couch while servants brought him delicious food, beautiful art, perfumes, and all the trappings of wealth. At some point, perhaps while a peeled grape was being plopped into his mouth, the young man looked up and saw something peculiar. It was a sword, razor sharp, dangling directly over his head, and had been so ever since he took his seat. The sword swayed ever so slightly in the breeze, and the horrified young man saw that it dangled by a single strand of hair. The young man, whose name was Damocles, apparently promptly lost his appetite and begged the king to let him go. This parable, the Sword of Damocles, was written by the Roman philosopher Cicero, and it's where we get the phrase hanging by a thread. For Cicero, the story was about the cost of power. With great power comes great worry, apparently. And it's not hard, though, for us today to push that story just a bit further, beyond just simply the merely wealthy, and to include all of us, everyone alive, and everyone who has ever lived, and suggest that the same sword hangs over every one of us, all day, every day, wherever we go and whatever we do. The promise of death looms over us all. There is a lot to say about death. In fact, some writers have said that all we humans ever talk about is death, whether directly or not. And if that is true, then it's true also that most of us have gotten over it. Sure, we sometimes get a little tingle. Sometimes it's a gut-twisting vertigo. But the fear of death is distant for most of us. We know it's there. We know it's where all journeys end. And while there's no sense in rushing toward it, there's also no point in dwelling on it, not unless we absolutely have to, or so some say. I should pause here and let you peek behind the curtain. Some of you may remember that Tom Zimmerman bought the sermon at the auction last fall. Today's that day, so we get to thank Tom. Tom wanted us to talk about mortality and specifically what it might mean for us all. I have to admit, I'm uneasy about this topic, in large part because I'm not a big fan of mortality. Never have been. In fact, I can remember being obsessed with life and death and legacy and hoping to write my name in the book of life with words dipped in fire, so that all will know my mighty deeds. And yeah, I really was like that. But if pushed, I would have cheerfully said that living a life worthy of legend is, at best, a runner-up prize. I was really vastly more interested in something I heard once, quote, "I don't want to achieve immortality through my work. I want to achieve immortality through not dying. I don't want to live on in the hearts of my countrymen. I want to live on in my apartment." I will say that now, some 30 years on from there, I still don't have a really good answer for the how can we live if we must die question. My sword of Damocles. I will also say that this is hardly new to me or to you. The entire Christian tradition was based on this one idea that death is not the end. Seriously, I mean that. Without the promise of life everlasting, Christianity would have been lost to the sands of time, much like the Ark of the Covenant. We've been struggling with all of this for a long, long time. 2,000 years before the resurrection of Jesus, the oldest surviving literary work that we humans have, the Epic of Gilgamesh, was basically a quest to find the gift of immortality. That's what the whole thing's about. Death may come for us all, but apparently we humans have never been happy about it. Which brings me to the elves. Anyone here watch the Lord of the Rings movies? Just a few of you. Anybody here watch the extended director's cut? Some serious commitment right there. How about any of the books? Anybody read the books? Yeah, I must have been 10 or 12 when I sat down with those. And like many of the kids that went on to play Dungeons and Dragons, I was all about the elves. The Noldor, the Vanyar, the Sindar, the Nandor, the Teleri, the first people. Maybe I should back up a second for the rest of you. For those of you that don't know, Tolkien wrote epic fantasy. His first book, The Hobbit, was published in 1937, almost 100 years ago. The three follow-on books, collectively called The Lord of the Rings, tell the story about a tale of unlikely heroes and their quest to end the rise of evil. It's great stuff. And as many of you may know, though, the Lord of the Rings trilogy was not the original sequel to The Hobbit. Anybody know what that was? The Silmarillion. Yeah, the Silmarillion was the original sequel. It wasn't as cool, so it didn't get published until many, many years later. But that is the book where Tolkien began to seriously develop the legends and myths and explanations for his magical, mythical world. In the beginning, at least according to the Silmarillion, there was Eru Ilúvatar, which roughly translates as the All-Father. Eru, through the power of its thought, brought forth the Valar and the Maiar, who we might think of as lesser gods. But together they formed a giant chorus, and they sang the world into being and woke the first beings in that world, the elves. For Tolkien, the elves were ageless, born of the earth. They were in some deeply mystical way tied to it. When the earth was destroyed, they too would be destroyed, but not before. They would live lives of grace and beauty and serve as stewards to that created world for all of time. Human beings came some point next. Not real clear how next, but some point next. But here, the plan for creation changed kind of radically because to humans was given a gift, the gift of Ilúvatar, the gift of mortality. For us today, this doesn't seem like much of a gift. And for the record, in the stories, the elves didn't think so either. But for Tolkien, with death came life. Life, at least as you and I are comfortable talking about it today. Death gave humans something new. The power and the urge and the desire, right, to shape their own destinies beyond the music of the world, beyond the imagination of the Creator itself. Death was the fuel that fired passion, created hunger and restlessness, curiosity and justice. Death was freedom, both in this world and from it. And that's how Tolkien saw it. We'll come back to that. Now, there are some threads within the myths and stories of Tolkien's books that kind of clash together these two approaches of life and death, endless and ended. One is the story of Luthien. The other is the story of Arwen. Both of these characters were elves. Both of them gave up immortality to live and die with their human husbands. Why they do this is an epic within an epic. Some leave for you to find out on your own. It's good stuff, good reading. But I suspect most of you will find the story very familiar. As you know, love makes you do marvelous and perplexing things. But for this morning, I am struck by how this would sound to an immortal. Less marvelous, more perplexing, perhaps. Because why would anyone deliberately and intentionally give up life everlasting? So let's turn that around just for a minute. If you were an immortal, what would you give it up for? That is, if you could live forever, would you? Would you? Oddly, at least for me, my younger self, a lot of you would give it up, but for something specific. And maybe for some good reasons. Most of those reasons, these arguments that I've heard against a long or at least possibly endless life, have to do with fairness, infirmity, and boredom. First, fairness is pretty straightforward. The old need to make way for the new, they say. Given that there are finite resources in the world, we should make sure that the young are given every opportunity to make their own mistakes. This is the natural cycle of life, they say. Fine. The second, infirmity. No one wants to live endlessly if endless life means constant and inescapable pain or being trapped in a body that is so frail you can't do anything, and so on. We are wherever we are on life's arc, and I expect that many of us see the years beyond our normally allotted span as stretching off into ever-increasing levels of incapacity and suffering. And we would say that that is no fun. Come back to that. Third argument is boredom. To be fair, this is what Tolkien suggests is potentially the biggest drawback for immortality, and that with the passage of strange eons, life will inevitably lose its luster and beauty, and even the gods will become jealous of humans and their gift. There are a lot of variations, but these are the gist, I think. So, about fairness. I have to say that I find this uncompelling. The average human lifespan has increased rather dramatically, doubling in the last 200 years. And no one, at least not that I know of, maybe we should do a quick survey, no one's seriously considering going backward, right? No, I don't think so. More good science, better healthcare, and careful life choices all seem to point to the possibility of a human lifespan that is considerably longer than we currently enjoy today. And given that most of us do what we can to take care of ourselves, I think it's safe to say that all of us here are pro-longevity. Also, I want to say that the argument against scarcity is kind of nonsense. How many stars are up there? A lot. Next, infirmity. This is a bit more pointed. If living to 200 means being on life support for the last 100, well, of course, no one wants that. But what if we could be elves instead? Could you imagine being trapped in the body of a hale and hearty 20-something for the next 100 years? Yeah, that would be terrible. Fine, that's not immortal. Let's call it a good start, right? And for the record, life-extending research is primarily focused not only on not dying, but on living well. Long before our inevitable infirmity. And if all that feels like science fiction to you, just remember, penicillin is less than 100 years old. Who knows what the next 100 years will bring? But I suspect it's safe to say that our descendants will have far more interesting medicine to draw on than we currently enjoy. As for boredom, is that me dinging? It is me dinging. Nice punctuation, right? As for boredom, well, speaking for myself, I currently have a library with enough reading material to keep me cheerfully busy for the next 175 years. Seriously, I think most of us would look at the chance for immortality, at least radical longevity, the same way that we would look at the chance for $1 billion Mega Millions jackpot. Yeah, being filthy rich has its problems. I see that, but before I decide that it's not right for me, maybe I should just try it out to be sure. After all, science demands data. Fine, yeah. All right, let me bring this home. I am deeply unconvinced that mortality is a gift, despite Tolkien's wonderful mythology. I find it hard to see as anything other than the Sword of Damocles hanging overhead. And it doesn't take a PhD to see that this view has pervaded science, politics, art, and literature for as long as there have been science, politics, art, and literature. But for right now, as it has been for all of human history to this point, our eventual end is something we cannot yet overcome. So whether we see it as a gift or a threat or how you or I feel about it is kind of moot. We can certainly face our life's span, however long or short it happens to be, with grace and calm and poise, like the elves or maybe the Buddha. But turning back to Tolkien, I am left wondering if calm and remove and poise just seems sad. Peace is good, but given the gifts that we have been given, I am left wondering if passion is better. And that is, I believe, why love and tragedy, meaning and epic struggle have all featured so heavily in Tolkien and in our other collective stories. Because the truth is, mortality has done something for us. It is perhaps an engine. Yes, it fills us with this awareness of fragility, a sense that there's tragic beauty in all things. But it also drives the constant human urge to seek truth and create meaning. It pushes us to wonder if there is something more out there, something more yet to be known, more yet to be experienced, more yet to be treasured. And that brings me back to that poem by Mark Morrison Reed. Death may be scary and final and impenetrable, but what we need to fear is not death, but squandering the lives we have been so miraculously given. And so it really is far more concerning for me today, here in this time and place, that we choose how to live and not waste the time we have by pretending we're something we're not. And maybe that is the gift of mortality. That we remember that living is every bit the choice that dying is not. That we choose, and that we can choose with the time and the resources that we have, not one day might have, but have right now. We can choose today and every day to live more fully, to live more boldly, and to live with more thanksgiving. The fate that awaits us all calls us to attend to today, to right now. It whispers to us constantly. Do not wait. Do not delay your hopes and dreams and regrets. Tomorrow was never promised. Now is all you have. Do not waste even a moment delaying for a miracle, dreaming about something hidden behind the horizon or some distant tomorrow. Create your miracle. Sail over your horizon. Make tomorrow today. Live better now. Love more now. Laugh more now. Create more now. Bring forth more art now. Strive, seek, find now. My friends, we are finite creatures adrift in infinite time and space, and as we have done down through the long ages, it is our lives that are the epic that we shout out to the heavens. We are here, we matter, we are alive. So it was, and so perhaps it ever shall be. For now, I'll close with this from Lord Tennyson, who once imagined Ulysses finally home, his long odyssey over, but still perhaps not inexplicably restless. Quote, "There lies the port, the vessel puffs her sail. There gloom the dark, broad seas. My mariners, souls that have toiled and wrought and thought with me, that ever with a frolic welcome took the thunder and the sunshine in opposed free hearts, free foreheads. You and I are old. Old age hath yet his honor and his toil. Death closes all, but something ere the end. Some work of noble note may yet be done, not unbecoming those that strove with gods." The lights begin to twinkle from the rocks. The long day wanes, the slow moon climbs, the deep moans round with many voices. Come, my friends, 'tis not too late to seek a newer world. Push off, and sitting well in order, smite the sounding furrows, for my purpose holds to sail beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars until I die. It may be that the gulfs will wash us down. It may be that we shall touch the happy isles and see the great Achilles whom we knew. Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved heaven and earth, that which we are, we are. One equal temper of heroic hearts, made weak by time and fate, but strong in will, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield. Amen.
Visit us at uusg.org.